This is Jamie Drummond for Good Food Revolution. I am broadcasting live and direct from the bucolic Beaver Valley, you can see behind me here. And joining me today is none other than Managing Director of Toronto's Salad King, Mr. Alan Liu. How are you today, sir?
Good, I'm doing well. How are you?
I am fantastic. All the better for seeing you after such a long time. Now, before we get into the meat of the interview, if you wouldn't mind, could you give me a potted history of Salad King and your involvement with it?
Sure. Well, Salad King actually started back in the 1980s. It was truly a salad restaurant back then. But through all sorts of changes, including ownership by a bunch of partners who came from the Golden Triangle area, that's when the salad restaurant started selling Thai food. We came to take over the restaurant in about 1991 or so, 1991, when we came over from Hong Kong. So since then, it started out literally as a hole in the wall. So if you can imagine one of those restaurants with dark corners, TV screens piled on top of paper boxes, and you never really want to, and the washrooms had locks on the doors. So it started out as a tiny restaurant there, and we just slowly grew just over time, over the past 30 years. It's almost 30 years now into the location that we are right now. One big change was in the year 2010. Our building that we were originally on Gold Street, that collapsed due to a number of issues, and that was all over the news. And we're now in our new location at 340 Yonge Street, and we've been there for 10 years now.
Now, how big was the restaurant cover-wise before the pandemic?
We were 172 seats.
172
so fairly, 4,000 square feet, a fairly big restaurant for a small business.
And one had to access that, because you're on the third floor, right?
Second floor.
Second floor, apologies. Yeah. And one accesses the restaurant via an elevator usually?
There's stairs and an elevator.
Okay. Now, I guess the crux of the interview is, how has this pandemic affected you, and what have you done to, as the lockdown eases somewhat, what have you been doing to mitigate the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, one of the things with Salad King is we've always had a diversified service. So not only did we do dine-in, but we had a quite robust takeout and delivery business as well. Our delivery originally was with Foodora, who've been partnered with them since before they were even Foodora. So we've one of our good fortunes is we do have that diversified revenue stream. So when COVID came, it immediately shut down our dine-in restaurant, but we were able to keep our takeout and delivery going. Granted, it really wasn't enough. I mean, that's one thing about downtown is rent is very high. All your fixed costs are quite high. So even with something like that, it wasn't really enough to keep the restaurant going. But fortunately, we're able to work with our landlords, our suppliers as well. The subsidies from the government were able to keep us afloat. But we were still doing brisk business with takeout and delivery. Then Foodora shut down, so that immediately required us to change gears right away and get new delivery partners on board, Uber Eats and Skip. So those were able to keep us going just with that business until about mid-August, when we were able to open a dine-in restaurant.
Now, when you opened as a dine-in restaurant, you had to make quite a sizable investment in protective screens, protective equipment, and the like. How much did you end up spending, and how much do you see that being as a spend ongoing right now?
So just in reconfiguring the restaurant itself, I spent about over $5,000-6,000 just in putting in new glass partitions, plastic partitions. My landlord actually built us a host stand, so we moved our host stand from the second floor down to the ground floor. So we moved the choke points on the stairwells. So that way, if there's a lineup, we handle it. They can wait outside the door as opposed to waiting on the stairwells, which would have been an exposure area. So just on the hard goods itself, it was about $5,000-6,000 or so. Keep in mind that has reduced our restaurant. We used to have, as I mentioned, 172 seats. We're now down to about 70 odd seats with about 18 tables or so. So quite a significant reduction in capacity, and we don't see any way of easing that until really quite a way down the road. So that in of itself is just all I spent on just the hardware. Now, in terms of safety equipment, that I have spent, I don't know, I spent $5,000-6,000, if not more, in safety equipment, whether it's PPE. We have 3 types of PPE within use in the restaurant right now for our service staff. We have level 3 masks that we purchased. We had to find a supply that was legit. So you can buy a lot of cheaper masks out there, but we made sure we found one that was properly certified, and we pay quite a bit more for those masks. Then we have shields that we use in the kitchen because masks are just too uncomfortable when you have all the heat. And we wanted to reduce, when it's uncomfortable, then people do this and more, and you're introducing other issues like foodborne illnesses, just
Of course,
hand-to-mouth issues. So we went with shields, which reduce the risk, but we acknowledge that it's not as good as a mask. But then our staff are also very good at keeping themselves safe even outside of work, and we have big, huge honking welder shields for people who are at higher exposures, like the dishwashers. So that I spent another $5,000-6,000, if not more. And those are ongoing costs. Like our gloves, before the epidemic, we were paying probably about $100 for a case of 1,000 nitride gloves. Now the prices are over $200 a case.
Oh, really? They've increased that much because of the demand?
They've increased that. It's all sorts of reasons, and it's kind of I've talked to my supplier, and they don't know for sure what the reason is. Whether that's just you'd think by now that we've all got tissue papers are back in stock, and you have no problem finding tissue paper. You would think that gloves are that way too, but just the whole demand and the supply chain has been so impacted that the prices have gone, as I said, it's double. So those are all going to be additional use of gloves, additional use of chemicals, additional uses of masks. So every 3 weeks, I need to buy another $1,000 worth of masks. So these are all going to be ongoing costs for the restaurant.
I've been speaking to some restaurateurs who have been saying that simply because of all of the extra precautions that an establishment has to take, the amount of time that a diner spends in the restaurant is extended somewhat. So turning the tables over and the kind of management of that has changed somewhat as well. Would you say that was an issue for you?
It's taking us longer for service because in between every table, we do have to sanitize and clean more thoroughly. Like we've split up our team, so the only persons allowed to touch the dirty dishes are our buses. So our servers are always clean. Every time they approach a table, they have new gloves on. We use the poly glove, so it's always, so we reduce the risk of spreading from one table to the next. But that takes time, and it also takes a bit of reminding because our servers are so used to good service, which means clearing a table, that you constantly have to remind them, no, please leave the tables, let the buses do it. So that, in that regards, it's taking us a bit longer for service. But so far, at least at Salad King, with a lot of people who are still a bit reticent about coming downtown to eat, and the employment sector and Ryerson itself hasn't been fully reopened. So we haven't been full, so we've always had the room to have, we've been full for a couple of times where we used up all 18 tables, but in most times there's been a couple of tables sitting around that we do have the time to clean. But it is taking a toll on the staff because whereas they would need to expend a certain amount of energy to take care of a table, now they have to spend a bit more because of all the precautions. So you see it wear them out a bit more just because of additional effort required to just serve all our customers.
I can understand that. I was forgetting that you had Ryerson so close to you, and Ryerson, with it not opening up fully, you would get a great deal of your clientele from Ryerson usually.
Ryerson and also just employment sectors, because right now what we're hearing is within the office buildings, maybe about 20% of the workers are back at that. Right. And right in Toronto, TDSB still hasn't reopened the schools yet. So there's still a lot of people who are working from home while taking care of the kids. So we really don't have an idea of how many more people would be coming back. But for now, it's been, it's the weekends are picking up, but otherwise it's, our lunch times are very, very quiet because there's just not a lot of people working in the
Right.
neighborhood.
Now, without wanting to pry too much, you must have had to sit down and completely rejig your business plan, because with the reduction in seats, with the expenses attached to the mitigation of the pathogen, how on earth does one go about doing that? Because we've already spoken about how much rent is down there, and I know that you manage your every square foot there to make it usually as profitable as possible. And you have, a set, you would imagine that a table you'd be able to turn that table a certain number of times. How on earth does one go about creating a viable business plan in this situation?
To be honest, you don't, right?
Right.
There really is no business plan because you can anticipate, as I mentioned, I can have a forecast for revenue over the next few months, but I really don't know what's going to happen. Right now school's open partially, but we don't know if that's going to, allow more people to come back to work, or if there's going to be a second, wave that's going to slow people down. So the answer to that is you can guess, but you really cannot. You really don't know what the future is going to bring for you in terms of revenue and in terms of business. So you really can't plan. But what you can do is just make sure you maintain fiscal discipline, right? You really watch your numbers. You really be smart about things, and you put yourself as an owner, you put yourself in the workforce. So before we had dine-in, because with dine-in, once we opened dine-in, we pretty much tripled the staff that we were bringing in.
Yeah.
But during the initial COVID era, we were working. I was there 6 days a week working with the staff. I was doing dishes. I was expediting orders and doing all that things until every day from open to close of the staff. So in the beginning, when things were really unsure, you didn't know what CWS was, you didn't know what any other programs were. You just had to run a really, really tight ship. And I know that's the case with all of my other restaurateur friends. Is you become part of the labor force, so you can make sure your costs are low. But in terms of the future, you really don't know. All you can really do right now is keep a very tight ship, make sure your numbers are controlled, and also maintain a relationship with all your suppliers. I mean, that's one advantage we've had, is we've worked with our suppliers some of the suppliers have been with us for close to 30 years. So when you go talk to them and say, hey, what can we do together? From Ecolab, from our garbage supplier, to our landlord, to our POS supplier, everyone has, where they can, work with us to manage our costs, right? So you have to go talk to everybody. Simple things like your payment terminals.
Yeah.
I had 5 wireless payment terminals. I don't need 5 wireless payment terminals right now. So give Chase a call and say, hey, what do you want me to do with the other 3? I don't need them. Do you want me to return them, or are you just going to give me a credit? And that's worth, that's worth $100 or so.
No, I hear you.
Right?
I hear you.
So you got to do those things, and don't be afraid of asking for help and working with your suppliers, because they want you to be successful in the long term too,
Of
right?
course, of course. Well, you're an essential part of their success too, right?
Yeah.
So, here's a question for you. How satisfied have you been with the 3 different levels of government support for restaurants?
They can always do more, but we're also appreciative of the complexity in handling. We're the restaurant sector. We see things from our restaurant sector's perspective, and we don't really, you don't really appreciate that other sectors, the government has to handle other sectors as well, which have different needs. And in talking to, I'm pretty sure you talked to John Sinopoli and the rest of the people in Save the Hospitality. And today I'm wearing a Ferrari hat because he's a big Ferrari fan, and it's Ferrari's 1000 race this weekend. This is for John. But we're just one sector, but we have unique needs because our profit margins, they were 5%, 4-5% before COVID. So you hit us with something like this, and it's going to be very tricky. But would we be able to survive without federal funding of CWS and CCRA, the answer is no, we would not be able to survive without it. And we are relying on that right now to keep us going. So we really need that. For example, the city of Toronto saying that masks are mandated really make a difference? Yes, because the customers wearing masks is a big part of the health strategy. So without that policy in place, we would have to be the ones who enforce something versus right now. So, that's been helpful. But we also understand the limitations of the government, like the rent relief and what have you. So, yes, we are. Could there be more done that's specific to the restaurant sector? Yes. Are we grateful for what's been there, and are we, do they help and make a difference? Absolutely. Without those, we would, even with Santa King on diversified income streams, we would not be able to keep going.
Now, you mentioned that you've been quite hands-on in the restaurant, and you were just speaking there about the mandatory mask wearing. I spoke with a friend who manages a fine dining restaurant, and I asked how things were going, and he said, "Oh, they're going." And there was a pause, and he said, "I like shouting at rich people because this was to do with people not adhering to the social distancing rules or the mandatory mask wearing coming into the restaurant." How have you found the public, your clientele, to be with regards to these new stipulations?
Uh, for us, actually, we've been quite fortunate that most of moving the whole stand downstairs so that we get to greet the customers right away before they walk up the stairs has made a big difference. So I would say over 95, most of our customers are more than happy to wear masks. They come in wearing masks. They have the mask on. Even before dine-in was open, when people came with takeout, they were wearing the masks.
Right.
We have been selling masks at the door for $1 a piece just for people who forget them. I may sold maybe in the past number of months, I've sold maybe 20 or so, and that's about it. Right. So most of the customers aren't coming in. You have to remind them. They tend to forget. I mean, there's reasonable things they forget to do, such as you're supposed to put it on when you get up from the table and go to the washrooms. That's kind of normal human behavior. But in general, our customers have been quite good about mask wearing.
Oh, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. And I always like to end these interviews on a kind of positive note. What is the most positive aspect of this whole pandemic? Something that you've learned, something you've experienced, some knowledge that you have gleaned from the process that you've gone through?
We have a pretty big staff usually, and I have about somewhere between 50 to 60 employees at any given time, including full-time and part-time staff. So during kind of the COVID, and even right now, we unfortunately have to have a smaller team because there's just not as much work available. And as I said before, some people can't work because they have to take care of their kids. So with the smaller team, I think people have gotten to know each other a lot better and gotten to be closer because, when we were only doing takeout delivery, there was literally 5 of us working every single day. So you got to really, develop a level of teamwork and camaraderie because you're not working in such a tight team. So that's been a big benefit to us and quite enjoyable. So as I said, right now, definitely the relationships between the team members have gotten better just because they've been fighting in the trenches for quite a while and survived it.
I can understand that.
So that's been a big positive. Yeah.
Alan, thank you very much for joining us at Good Food Revolution this morning. And I'm glad to hear that you are weathering the storm.
Yeah, thank you. And I, mighty jealous of your new surroundings. If I could get out there.
Well, hopefully I'll come down and see you sometime soon. But thank you very much for your time today. Bye for now.
Bye for now.